Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. Something a little bit different for you today. I have a discussion with Jim Berg, the CEO, founder of Join Cycling, our show partner. We get into a discussion about the business of starting Join Cycling, which I know is interesting to both myself as a startup person or small business owner, as well as the training philosophy behind Join Cycling, training philosophies in general, and new features for the app, what getting equity investment for the first time was like, some challenges, as well as, yeah, just a general discussion about training plans in cycling. So if you're interested in business, startups, or training, not just on the bike, but endurance training generally, as well as some common pitfalls for amateurs, then this will be the episode for you. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you with our big Tour de France preview sometime next week. Hopefully, all the World Tour teams know to announce their team lineups as soon as possible so Benji and I can get into it. But here we go with Jim Berg from Join Cycling. So we're in that weird period before the Tour de France, after Tour de Suisse. No one knows what to do with themselves. Here with Jim Berg from Join Cycling. Jim, what's your background in cycling? I presume it predates the digital age as well. Like, what's your background? Were you a competitive cyclist, or were a coach of competitive athletes before moving into Join?
Yeah, a bit of both, to be honest. Well, when I was still a teenager, I wanted to become a professional cyclist, as many of us. Didn't made it to like the full pro ranks, but kind of got stuck in the middle as a semi-pro. So I did ride my bike competitively for a couple of years at the continental level, which is great. When you're a student, right? You can pay the rent, do some groceries, and then the money is gone already. But you see a bit of the world, and that's all fine. So I did my studies here in Amsterdam and in France, in Montpellier, human movement sciences actually, and a bit of sports psychology as well. And actually, right after getting my master's degree, I decided, together with a friend of mine, to start my own coaching business, which was called Robic, after the famous French cyclist Jean Robic. So we started with a traditional coaching business in making training plans for cyclists. Back then, there weren't like a lot of sports physicians or exercise psychologists that were really specialized in coaching cyclists. So we thought like this could be a good idea. And we built a center with sports dietitians, sports physicians, physiotherapists, and human movement scientists like myself in helping out like those really fanatic, competitive, and also pro cyclists. And that's actually how I know Luc as well, because I trained him for a couple of years.
And was that like in a traditional school of like Jan Olbrecht style? Was it your own philosophy? Because like, I know a lot of the Dutch trainers, got the Jan Olbrecht, who, if you don't know, was a famous swimming coach, but also like it's the principles apply for endurance sports generally, or was it your own mix of things?
Well, I think we all, even Jan Olbrecht, are like standing on the shoulder of giants. So it's always a bit of, a lot of like scientific approaches. And I must say, especially like, for example, in the Netherlands, a lot of exercise testing is based on oxygen consumption. And a lot of like, from the more German school, is a lot based on lactate testing. And I think we were a bit of both, like in terms of philosophy. But to don't get too much in the specifics, people like Jan Olbrecht or Steven Schuyler, or, well, you name them, are of course really influential in what we do, basically.
And but by oxygen consumption, you mean testing the VO2 max,
Yeah, exactly.
and then seeing what proportion of VO2 max can be used rather than lactate.
Yeah, a lot of that is like really based on the kind of depending on what kind of study or university you went to. And here in the Netherlands, a lot is based on more like VO2 max. Whereas like in Germany, for example, a lot is based on lactate testing. And lactate testing was like almost, well, not even 10 years ago, it was kind of outdated, and now it's like fully back over the past 5 years or so. So it goes with, with currents, it goes with waves.
That's probably because of the Norwegians, because like the
Exactly.
Ingebrigtsens use the lactate testing. They do 20 tests a track session, but it's much more difficult to do in cycling because unless you're riding around a track and stop after every VO2, every threshold interval,
Yeah,
or you're
true.
on a
But
trainer.
like, then again, when I was a coach at a World Tour team in 2010, we also did like lactate testing on Col de Rats, for example. So it's not something it's never been away. It's nothing. There's a lot of stuff going on that's not like really new or something. Despite the fact we sometimes do like it's completely new and out of the blue.
And so, when did you have the idea to create Join Cycling, or to create an application rather to go from an analog coaching business to a digital coaching business?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I was already, coach within this more, let's say, traditional coaching firm for, I think, over a decade. And we knew already there wasn't like a new realization or something that there are just so many cyclists that you don't reach with, with like a business model in which, okay, you have a goal, I'm your coach, I'm going to train you, we're going to regularly do updates, and like every week or so, I'm going to update your training plan. And then, what if after week or in between like the week something happens? Then do we need to update the plan, or how do we get in contact? And a lot of cyclists don't have the necessity, so to say, to have those frequently updated training plans. And still there are a lot of just normal everyday cyclists that do feel like sometimes they could use a little help or a bit of advice. And by the way, that's not only about that. If like a personal coach is working for you and you pay that coach, I don't know, $100, maybe more, it's not only about the money that it's like costly or something. It's also about, do you really need like a human movement sciences graduate to make you a training plan if you just want to do, I don't know, your first 100-mile cyclo or something? That kind of like feels sometimes a bit unbalanced. And then we thought, like, couldn't we make something that just acts like a human coach, but also gives you the flexibility that if you don't feel like doing a structured workout, or if you, on the last moment decide to go on a group ride, that your plan moves along, because those things are really important for a recreational cyclist. And it was also like something after I did my last races already back in 2016. And when I stopped cycling like competitively, I stopped racing basically. Well, not completely, but sort of. That I realized like, hey, it's great. You sometimes still want to do a structured workout, but you don't have that like absolute goal anymore to do 4 of those in a week. You also just want to ride with friends, for example. And there should be a combination of things. And there wasn't, basically. Or I didn't feel like that there was. So we decided to build it ourselves.
And like, I presume you're not a computer programmer, and I've also grappled with this before. I tried to build an app once in university. So like, you and a friend or a colleague, what, you just decide to do it, and then what do you just self fund it and just get like a beta test app ready, or like a minimum viable product ready with one programmer, or how did it work then?
Yeah, a good one. Well, actually, the first iteration was a really big Excel file, just a macro where just a lot of stuff was happening if something changed. But a friend of mine, our current CTO, Ilya Boy, I actually used to coach him in this coaching business. And he was like a really fanatic cyclist. And we were, I was also like working on some software things. Like he was working on a platform called Big Ring VR. That was like an indoor platform. He built it himself, and I kind of gave some advice there. And I was working for Tux and their software in making training plans. So I had a bit of history there. But yeah, I wasn't a developer myself. So I basically actually asked him like, hey, what do you think? Could we like pull this off if it works like this and this? And could we make it this adaptive and this flexible? And he actually kind of convinced me that it was doable. So we have to thank him for that. And yeah, then we decided like, okay, this could be really something, but making an app is pretty costly, like you may have experienced yourself, because like with only the idea you're not there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we landed an investor that was already investing in an application which was called Joy at that time. But that app was kind of lacking a business model. So that was kind of coming to an end. And yeah, it was just right timing for starting this. So kind of like accidentally, let's be honest, came together there.
So it all started in an Excel spreadsheet, just a macro in Excel.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And then that was the algorithm, the adaptive
that was
algorithm,
like
the original one.
Yeah, when it was only an algorithm, and that was like first iteration. And that's the beauty of this. And that's actually what I really like myself still, as, I mean, the company grew. I also became like, part of my job is, of course, also managing the company nowadays. But I'm actually also still like a coach and an exercise psychologist in really like, turning little knobs, basically.
And so then you launch it first in the Netherlands is like the original market.
Yeah.
And then how did that work? You just give it to your network of cyclists that the 100 guys or women you knew to use it, and then it grew from word of mouth? Like, how did you actually then launch it?
So we actually pivoted the company because, like I said, the application, the platform was already called Join, because it was like a meeting place for cyclists to meet up, to do a ride together. We kept the name basically, and we started pivoting the company in July 2019. And it took us a bit over a year, in October 2020, to really launch training plans on within the app itself. But there were like a couple of steps in between. First, it was an Excel file, then it was a JavaScript. Then we wrote adaptive training plans. We wrote it away to today's plan. And we had like a beta group of 30 cyclists that were testing like how it worked. And then we released it more than a year after in the app itself. So there was like a run up, and that's also why developing this sort of things is from the beginning kind of like expensive.
And so it launches in the Netherlands, really well known then eventually in the Netherlands, mainly through word of mouth, or you also had the podcast marketing plan?
First of all, because so we are like, our application is basically running for almost a year, like almost 4 years, 3.5 years, approximately. And at first, not a lot happens, because you just try to reach your own network, see if people like it, starting up your marketing plan. And that takes a while. And we did start it like in July 2021. We started with a podcast here in the Netherlands called like Beter Worden. Basically means like how to get better on a bike. And together with Laurens ten Dam and Stefan Bolt of Live Slow Ride Fast. And that was like our first real way of reaching a big audience that might be interested in a training plan like this.
So once you've the thing I'm really interested in is like the data you have access to on people's training habits. Because that's what I would I'm really interested in. Like I would say yeah, the average join user would be like an enthusiastic amateur, maybe. I mean, it could be
Yeah,
anybody, but say the average user.
yeah,
Um, like what hours are they actually doing a week, and also like what is the most common training mistake they are making? If there's like one mistake people are doing, and I think I know what I do myself, like
yeah.
what is the most common
Which
mistake
is
they're making? And 1 week off turns into 1 month off.
okay.
When
Yeah,
I'm training, I'm good. When I'm training,
yeah,
I'm training, and I'm
hmm,
doing 9, 11 hours a week.
yeah,
The problem is not that I then sometimes do 6 and 7 hours a week on a bad week. The problem is I just take a month off
yeah,
and then I have to start again.
yeah. Well, that's the funny thing, right? Like, exercising is actually addictive. Your body just produces substances, endorphins, stuff like that, that keeps you going. It's even like guys that are trained that come out of the Tour de France. It's pretty hard to not touch their bike for a week, for example. And it's not only about like the after tour crits, but yeah, exercising is addictive. And if you, yes, stop touching your bike for a while, it's pretty hard to start up again. But yeah, let's go back to your question. Like the average cyclist in join. Well, if you paint yourself like this pyramid, that in top you have this like that's a really small niche competitive cyclist that race around with bib numbers. That's not the typical join user. Then like all the way at the bottom, you have like this really beginner that maybe just bought their first bike or a second-hand bike, and that's he or she that just, and that's would also my advice be like, yeah, start just playing around, ride with friends, try to learn a thing or two, and don't focus on training or workouts yet. Just try to, you know, take a corner the right way. That's or ride within a group, that sort of stuff, and don't burden yourself with all kind of intensity models. To be honest, and then yeah, on top of that, you have like a pretty large audience that sets him or herself a goal every year, which can be like, hey, I just want to maintain my fitness, or I want to ride La Marmotte, or I want to do my first 100K ride. It can be whatever, but it's a group of cyclists that might be riding their bike already for a couple of years and would like to maybe also do some other sports, by the way, and just want to, yeah, increase their habits basically, and that's, and then all up to like we have enjoyed also people that ride their bike like 5-6 times a week, and also are competitive. But yeah, that's a fairly broad audience basically.
And what's the like most common plan then people are doing? Like what are people actually trying to get good at? Because my guess is like stamina builder or is like FTP builder is like the number one, but that could
Yeah,
be
so
wrong.
the stamina builder, but that's also a plan that we recommend to start with
True,
if
yeah.
you've been out for a couple of months or so. And that's also like, okay, most common mistake is not to ride your bike 12 months a year. What we see, and actually you could also turn that one around, because you don't, what a lot of people do, and that's actually why they're not riding the bike 12 months a year, is that there are certain periods within the year they just do too much. Like they set themselves a goal, especially triathletes, by the way, are a big fan of that approach. They think like, hey, I need or I want to do this Ironman, and then they train their ass off for 3 or 4 months, maybe a bit longer. But then like the whole burden, the mental load of everything was just so big for that just short time span that they can't maintain that mental energy basically, and that's why they don't touch their running gear or the bike for half a year, and like everything they gained within that time period, they lose easily within actually 2 or 3 months, because you kind of lose it faster than you build it up again. But so that's the most common mistake. So you need to find like a way, and that's not only for joint users but for everyone out there. Like find a way that is as least mentally draining, if you know what I mean, as possible. So always think, for example, hey, I want to incorporate strength training in the gym. Okay, great if you want to do that. Why do you want to do it? Do you want to become a competitive sprinter in the Tour de France? Or do you actually like it? Well, if it's the latter, then go for it. But also ask yourself, like, if it takes you, for example, an hour to drive up to the gym, do your thing, then drive an hour back, then, okay, is this really something you can maintain for a longer period of time? And how much energy does it actually cost you if you just have a daytime job? So, and with everything you do, with every goal you set, like, is this really something I could do for, 12 months a year? And of course, there can be a bit of seasonality that you do a little less in the winter or more indoor in the winter, that sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong. We're all human. But try to focus on the things that you can really maintain for a longer period.
Yeah, that's why I always I could do a harder plan, like I physically could do it, but I kind of do a super achievable one. Like I said, maybe my level to intermediate or advanced, I can't remember exactly, but I was like, I could theoretically do more, but I feel like if I stack the easier ones back to back, then I'll have more success eventually. But I one thing I wanted to ask, the reason I asked at the outset was like about the training philosophy. It does seem very like Dutch, German, and Belgian, and kind of the new model, probably the way a lot of teams are training. Like it is not so much high tempo,
Yep.
not so much threshold, although there is. I'm just generally here. Of
Yeah.
course, different plans are different, but like it seems like a lot of easy zone 2, but not a lot, like a decent amount of volume in zone 2, and then like sprints, even when you're doing an endurance-based program, and then usually a VO2 a week.
Well, that's actually a pretty good summary. It changes depending on like your training history, the time you have, the goal you've set, but there are some key things that are really important. Like first of all, we do train like the whole spectrum, but like not that much tempo and especially not that much threshold. There's also like in VO2 max, it's more polarized. But if you do like less hours, for example, you don't follow any like 80-20 rule. That doesn't make any sense, because if you don't train that much, the load per workout should be a bit higher, or can be a bit higher, because there are just more rest days in between. There are also things like frequency is actually more. You first should get like the frequency in, instead of doing like really big efforts that, if you're not like trained for it, will take you up to 3 days to recover. And then there's just not enough training load over the week, month, year, etc. So there are some key elements that of course defines our philosophy. But to be totally honest here, this is a philosophy that we all know already from a lot of like scientific papers. I mean, I could tell you that it's pure magic what we do, but it isn't. This is just open source out there knowledge that is there already for quite a while. But then again, like especially there's some newer papers on doing not that much hours a week, but a lot of high intensity stuff, and then compared to doing like only endurance rides, for example, and that the effect of it is kind of similar, which is something over the past 3 to 5 years or so. Why? So that's a bit newer, let's say. But that's also why frequency is so important, for example.
And do you have any? You mentioned other sports, and like I feel like triathletes, like triathlon, you seem to, when you need to do an Ironman, like you actually have to have a plan, or even Olympic distance. You have to be, I guess, pretty talented to just like do some miscellaneous training and rock up and complete it, or like do a half decent time. So like, is that a market you're looking at eventually? I know there's some new features coming down the road. Like, is there a plan to target that market in the medium term or long term?
No, there isn't, because our short-term market, the people that we want to help first are actually the the kind of like everyday athletes, cyclists that occasionally, for example, do a run, or runners that occasionally do a ride. Like, and because that's something that I personally also really believe in, of what I see myself that really works. Like, cyclists could, it's pretty beneficial for just a recreational cyclist to do, for example, a weekly or a bi-weekly run. That doesn't necessarily be at a really high pace or anything, but cycling is like a pretty one-dimensional sport, in which like things like getting a lower bone density is a risk that we see, of course, a lot in the pro peloton. So doing like a more weight-bearing and impactful sport as running, it can be really beneficial for cyclists. And then again, we see a lot of runners not being able to, I mean, the really talented ones, of course, can build up a big training load with running, but a lot of runners are just not that gifted to do, for example, 5 runs a week. So for them, it's actually really beneficial to do like your endurance, your aerobic stuff on a bike. And there are a lot of runners, also like professional runners, that are currently doing that. And we would like to help the everyday cyclist or runner with, okay, how can we combine running and cycling that it actually fits the capabilities you have as a runner or a cyclist? Because like a lot of cyclists have the stamina to go out for like a full 45 minutes, 60 minutes run, but then they can't walk for another week. So
That
that's
happens
not the
every
way
off
to do
season.
it.
Every off season,
Well,
they get told, if your bone density, go and do a run. And
yeah,
then
exactly.
every single off, I think Leanna Lippert, she broke something.
Yeah.
Dinham, I think Dinham did as well. And like they lose then like 6 months of the season
Yeah, and they
because
get
they get a
stress
stress fracture.
fractures, and exactly. So, and that doesn't mean that they need to listen to Joy, but we would like to set up cyclists with a better idea of, okay, I want to do that run, but how do I actually build up my running condition, stamina, so to say. So that's something that we would like to focus on first, and that's actually something we are on the starting point of testing with a beta group for that. And that looks really promising, or I'm pretty enthusiastic about it.
What's the literature say, or the general principles about the additional muscular fatigue from running? That's what I always, because I already do it. Sorry, I know maybe I shouldn't, Jim, but yeah, I think you already know. Like sometimes I substitute out the joint workout. I'm like,
Vision.
fuck it, I'm gonna go do it in the mountains today because the weather's nice, and my dog is looking at me like, you need to take me out to the mountains. And I go, and I'm lucky where I live, and I go do it. The same workout, sort of the heart rate in the mountains, but then like clearly the muscular fatigue is much more severe if you do a threshold workout on the legs. So like,
well, the strain is much bigger, and the problem is the eccentric contractions, especially if you do it in the mountains, like you do yourself. The thing is actually running downhill. That so the muscle actually needs to shorten, but it gets like lengthened, get like pulled out, and that gives a lot of strain and muscle soreness, and that's something you need to recover from. And that's the beauty of cycling. We only have this concentric movement in which actually the muscle shortens, and you're not, or not necessarily, but that eccentric contraction just gives a lot of muscle soreness, and it takes a lot of time to recover from. And that really impairs, of course, the quality of your next cycling workout, for example. So, running downhill, for example, that's not the best way to, especially if you're not really used to it, to start with that. But if you live in Andorra, that might be a problem.
So I'm used to it now. It took me 2 full years to get used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I would see like these like kids, they all look like Kylian Jornet. and they would run past me. They have training. They do training after school, part behind my house where I
Yeah.
used to live, and it was literally like 1 kilometer, 33%. And I just see these
Okay.
kids run up and down, and I was like, how the fuck?
Yeah.
I still can't run up as fast, but like now I can at least like run down. But yeah, it takes
It's all.
a long time to get used to it. And even like I know because yeah, my dad was a like pretty high level runner. He like ran like a 32-minute 10K at like 53.
Okay. Wow.
But then yeah, he had to have
Kind of the same as Bauke Mollema.
but then he had to have two knee reconstructions.
Yeah.
So like it swings and roundabouts, you know. And but now he did a lot on the exercise bike. But yeah, running is everyone runs too fast, I think.
Yeah, but it's
when you see look at the Kenyans warm up. Look at them doing their warm up. They're crawling.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's so it takes baby steps, and like just a normal level cyclist can easily run like 4.5 minutes
Yeah, that's the problem.
per kilometer, but they should actually run at 6. And the thing is, if you run at 6 or 6.5, it kind of might feel like, hey, I'm not doing a lot. Your heart rate might be like all the way down to 100 or something, you know. And that's the thing. So when they start running, they actually need to first get their body there instead of like the cardiovascular response there. So their first couple of weeks, months should just feel as not being really impactful on their cardiovascular stamina. And that's fine. That's those baby steps you need to take. So that's actually where we would like to help cyclists become better runners.
Yeah, and is there any... How do you view feeding or nutrition? Is that something you're like, that's better done with a separate service, or eventually do you think you could even have carbohydrate grams per hour recommendations for a workout? Well, how do you view that? Because nutrition is sometimes a bit of a minefield.
Well, it is and it is not. First of all, it's really important. I mean, you train what you eat. If you carb up, you're ready to go. You're going to hit your VO2 max workout. If you want to do a VO2 max workout like fasted, you will not hit your numbers, right? Probably.
David Noakes, don't listen to this. The low carb diet. COVID, I think, killed low carb. I think it's finished. You don't even hear it anymore.
Well, I must say, I was listening to a podcast like recently, and it all came back, like low carb and everything, really? And on the keto diet. Well, the thing is always not sure if we should like dive into this rabbit hole, because it's always kind of like this is actually the minefield that you're talking about.
True, it's polarizing. Yeah, because people are like, no, it is useful sometimes.
So black and white.
Of course, like listen, you can do it if you want to if you're losing weight and you go do 45 minutes on the trainer at zone 2, low zone 2 in the morning fasted. Of course, it's fine. But
yeah, that's fine. It is possible. Yeah. But, you know, how does it fit in your, like, the bigger picture? And that actually goes back to what I said earlier. Like, is that something that's really feasible for you? Because, like, yeah, that's how your daily life looks like. I don't know. Then it might be a good idea. But, you know, what's the gain? Why do you do it? Are there any other substitutes? And, you know what the most important thing is about training? You always should look to your training history and the training background before, like, because what works for you tomorrow is really based on what you did like yesterday, and not based on whatever dogmatic philosophy just swung by, and that you think, oh, now it's all about this or that. No, it isn't. Like, the human body is like the same for a long time, and yeah. So getting back to your question. Try to get out of this rabbit hole is like, okay, because what you eat on a bike, what you eat before you ride, that's really important. And that's something that you should like dial in as well for, which can be pretty personal. But it's, for example, something also why we hooked up with Food Coach. That's originally designed for at least my Visma bike, or they actually designed it themselves. And it's a platform in which, Join communicates with directly. So if your plan changes, and by that also like your dietary needs for tomorrow change, and then your food plan changes accordingly. And that could be really helpful for a lot of people. But you can have some rough like standards to like, okay, if I go out for this 4 or 5 hour ride, this is the amount of carbs I want to take per hour. And if you do this 1.5 hour ride, then you know that you don't need that much like on the bike anymore. And there's also this thing like sometimes, especially for just everyday normal day cyclists that go out for a 3-hour ride, for example, they don't have to carb load like a Roglic with 120 grams an hour. That's not really necessary for them to hit their goals, because they don't have to do another stage tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah, so like that's what I sort of, if I do an hour and a half, I'm just like eat normally and maybe have one bar. And I don't really overthink it too much. But that's also like I try not to overthink it as well, because if I'm doing 1.5, 2.5 hour rides, like I don't need to have 5 gels an hour. Like,
Yeah, depending on like what part of the day you're doing your workout and when you had your last meal, there should be enough glycogen in the body to maintain whatever you're planning for 1.5 hour. So, and especially if you don't go out with only a bottle of water, but isotonic drink with, I don't know, 25, 30 grams carbs, then you should be fine. And yeah, take a bar with you if you bunk, but hopefully you don't, because that's just depending on when you had your last meal,
And pivoting back to the join as a business a little bit more, like last year, big step, you took your second investment round and like a bigger investment round. And I guess from the outside looking in, it looked like the idea was to move, the app was successful in the Netherlands, proven like business case in the Netherlands. Is it to move it globally? Was that like one of the focuses, as well as more features, etc., like that we already described?
Yeah, well, a bit of both, basically. We had a great community here in the Netherlands and Belgium, like Dutch-speaking part of the world, and we have a great product market fit with people with power meters or other types of sensors also being active on other platforms. And we know that there are a lot of same kind of cyclists that are, for example, also active on Strava, or maybe even on Training Peaks or intervals.icu. And we would like to help them as well. But we also see still a ton of features or possibilities to try to make, just training or improving a bit easier. So don't expect us to come up with all kind of features that are already, for example, intervals.icu, because there are great things that I use myself as well, but that's not necessarily for everyday cyclists. There are things there that, you might want to read a book about it before like clinging on to whatever numbers out there. And we like to do a lot of complicated stuff on the background and making it really easy for you what to do tomorrow. And if you feel like, hey, I'm not up for this structured workout, or what, it is something completely else, that's totally fine. Because that's honestly what I truly believe as a coach as well. That's the way that brings consistency. That's the way to be like physically active 12 months a year. And that's like a real game changer. If you can achieve that, being physically active 12 months a year, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be up that limit for every month, but just keep going. That's the biggest game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, because like I don't have an exercise science degree or human movements degree. I cannot create a plan. I would say I'm quite good at interpreting a rider's training history and power data. I would hope so. Otherwise, I should probably get fired from my other job. but like I don't know how to like structure. It's like, okay, we need to improve this rider's aerobic capacity, and so we're gonna do sequence the workouts like this. I have no idea how to do that. But I could interpret, of course, like yeah, your CTL line, and then whether a rider could be
Mhm.
overtrained, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why, yeah, I use intervals as well
Yeah,
for like all that. I don't even really get anything out of it. I kind of just like looking at it, just
yeah.
to see where I'm going. But yeah, I actually cannot myself create a plan.
No, but you know what you should realize yourself, and maybe this helps you, and maybe this helps you in gaining actually in exercise psychology, exercise physiology degree, is that there are also multiple answers to what you could do to increase the aerobic capacity. If you would do with the same starting point and the same genetic profile, like all like ceteris paribus, all circumstances are exactly the same, and you would follow like the exact training plan twice, you won't end up with the same results because everything, all the dots are like connected, but they all interact every time in a different way. And that's like the nature of complex systems. And that's something why that's actually some, that's also why, for example, you can't predict the weather in 2 weeks from now. But we are fairly capable, well, not personally, but to predict the weather for tomorrow. So we could tell you what to do tomorrow, although there are also multiple answers, but it's already pretty hard to nail like down why you should do this workout in 2 weeks from now. That's kind of already impossible. And that's why if you train professional athletes, for example, yeah, you have daily contact about how it goes. And especially, for example, altitude camps, you want to have like a daily check-in, like, okay, is everything still according to plan? Because you're doing this balancing act with athletes that you want their daily feedback about how it's going and how they feel. And you maybe want to, yeah, you can increase it a bit or not. So you want to train a bit lower or not, or take a rest day or not. And so um, that's something that's really important in training plans in general or coaching an athlete. If you get what I mean.
Well, yeah, there's like they are reviewing like the heart rate to power ratio. How did they respond to these intervals today at altitude? Or they look a bit like they need another day to
Mm-hmm.
recover. They're not because yeah, some guys if they're born at altitude, they can go up 3 days chill and they're ready to go. Some guys need like six
Exactly.
days, and they're kind
But
of
it's
cooked
and
for
it's
three
also
days.
not only in the data, you know. It's not
Yeah,
only
yeah.
that if I can not only look to a power file. For example, what like when I did my studies, like rate of perceived exertion was like completely outdated. No one used to work with that anymore. And nowadays it's kind of like in every training platform and also in Join, it's kind of a cornerstones like asking after a train, like how you perceived it. And if we see a mismatch, or if we see like, hey, based on the data and the intensity you felt yourself is like off for multiple times, then things change again. And that's how, in my view, a training plan or a coach should iterate on a daily basis. To get you to the best results, basically.
So you mean if I do like a 4 by 10 mins tempo workout, 2 hours without zone two,
Mhm.
should be RPE 4, let's say, and
Yeah.
I feel fucked and I put 8, then
Then if the difference is this big, then already something happens.
okay. So it'll be like
But if you would fill in like a 5 or a 6, and we see it happening multiple times, and there are ranges for that, and it's kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
dynamically working, but then also things change. Yes,
Okay.
as it should be. As your if you would have like a coach working for you, hopefully you would react in the same manner.
Yeah, maybe my FTP set a bit too high. Is that also what people do? Like, is there a danger when people can input their FTP and override it? Like, do people overestimate it? Because I did the opposite. I did the ramp test within the
Mhm.
platform, and I was like, I don't trust the ramp test FTP, and I downward adjusted by 10%.
Yeah. Well, if your FTP is set too high, and you don't reach those power numbers, then probably your RP is also a bit higher
Yeah.
than we would have expected. And then also, the plans or your next workout, kind of like ease off. So it kind of corrects itself. But that being said, it's not like that we then create for you a whole new FTP setting of something like that is not going on.
And so I'm also interested from a business perspective, what was like the most difficult thing so far? I feel like actually creating the first thing you did, which was the original algorithm, and then iterating on that is kind of like your bread and butter, but maybe that
Exactly.
was the most difficult thing. But yeah, what has been the most difficult thing for you, both you personally and the company? Is it like trying to navigate all the business stuff? Is it managing people? Is it knowing what features to do? Because like you said, it's still a
Uh,
small company, 15 people. I presume you could do a million different things.
yeah, and I think that's actually what currently is the most difficult thing is always the tension between product and marketing. Like we also designed Join to be simple, intuitive, and we try to lower barriers and not want to make things more complicated because those platforms are already there and they're great for people that want to learn a thing or two about it. But we like to keep things simple. But then again, a lot of our users or community is always asking for more and more, and that's something you need to navigate through. But to be honest, like, is there like one most difficult thing? But because I personally, I like to coach people, but I also like to build a company, and with everything that comes along with it, even doing an investment round, or just building a team, or making the marketing plans and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's also stuff I like. Um, to be totally honest with you, like when I was just out of university, one thing I realized pretty soon, I don't want to be like a full-time coach within a team training only cyclists
Yeah, okay, like with a pro team
with a pro
training.
team.
Yeah, right. Why is that? Because they're like it doesn't change, or it's too small a group of people, or what?
Because it's not as dynamic as what I'm currently doing, and it it's so what I well, okay, let me be honest here. I love professional cycling, and um, I mean I'm still working in it, but there are also a lot of things there that I hate, especially like the volatility of the business itself. Teams just come and go, and also like the difficulty there to really build something that still exists in 10 or 15 years from now. And I mean, there are a couple of teams, also the team that you're working for, which are doing a great job in that. But that's really something that I would find really difficult to work with. That you never know. Yeah, okay, we are doing this, we are trying this out, but does this team actually exist in 2 years from now?
Yeah, also even in the short term, there's more like you're training a rider, and then all of a sudden the management's like, we need UCI points. They are going to race 2 races every 2 weeks, and
Well,
that's for 20 weeks or 30 weeks straight. That happens.
exactly.
That
It
happens.
happens.
And like an amateur could train would then have more control over an optimal training plan. And yeah, like if you look at the guys racing a French Cup every week, like it's yeah. And if you're the trainer, I could imagine it gets. And I know that trainers, get frustrated. They're like, what how the fuck am I supposed to design
Exactly.
a plan
Well,
for this?
when I just came out of university, I was training. I was a trainer at a World Tour team, and there was a Spanish guy coming from a really big English team. And I was like, okay, I want to know everything about it. Like, how do they train? What do they do? And one of the first things he said to me, and I actually looked at his training files, and he said, like, yeah, well, you know what the thing was? Like, our big hitters in the team, they're getting like all the attention and stuff like that. But a lot of us just need to show up and do their thing. And that's and luckily, because I'm talking about something that happened 15 years ago, a lot changed since then. And we are going in the right way. But at the same time, things are going slow. Also because the business model is still broken.
And also, there's so many races. And to be honest, there are sometimes you do need on the roster